Okay, can I speak?
Yes, yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So resources were not utilized because, but there was no awareness. So the bringing awareness, this is part of governance. See, so we have to make people aware about the policy of the government, and we can involve civil societies, NGOs, and maybe academic institutions. I think at the school level, and we can start at the school, college level. So I think that can help. And then, as far as the government is concerned, as far as I know, I think government is making a lot of efforts towards the attaining sustainable development goals. They have identified some aspirational districts. Now the government is focusing at the development efforts in these aspirational districts, and they are monitoring the progress in their implementation of their policy. So the funds from the industry, also funds of the corporate social responsibility is diverted towards this aspirational districts, and industries and corporate sector can spend that money, in certain priority area of the government. So the government has making very concentrated efforts toward attainment of sustainable development goals. So I think, am I able?
Kiran bhai, you are audible to us.
Okay. Then
those who have joined online, but I don't know about the host. Only Rakesh Singh Saab can tell us that whether he can hear us. Simranji, can we hear? Can you hear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kiran bhai, now you go ahead. Narasimhanji, you have to mute.
Sorry, Kiran bhai.
Hello.
Kiran bhai, chalu karo.
You are audible.
So the first thing that we have to do is to improve our governance. The second thing is that improve the quality of labor force through, I think, providing quality education. And meanwhile, of course, skill development programs can continue, but then that is not a solution that cannot replace. We have to understand that the skill development programs cannot replace the quality education. It can at best supplement it. So our top priority should be to provide the quality primary education. Of course, there is a debate about the higher education. Recently, there was one study that I was going through that says that, the higher education is an engine of increasing inequality. So, of course, it is debatable, but then education does help. And the many studies have, I think, documented that it helps in the mobility, mobility from different income groups, from lower income groups to higher income groups. So I think that is well documented and it can be understood also, I think. And of course, it is also necessary to improve, I think, the quality of public services. That also can, I think, bring down the different kind of disparity and inequality among the different socio-economic groups. So since the people discuss about horizontal inequality and vertical inequality and different things, they consider horizontal inequality to be bad and vertical inequality not to be that bad. But anyway, the horizontal inequality is considered to affect, the stability of or the fabric of our socio-economic political system. So that has to be addressed. Anyway, then of course our taxation system also probably can be changed. At least some change we can bring about and spend that additional raised resources in improving the quality of our public services. I think this is what I wanted to say in a nutshell, in a limited time. I think my predecessors have covered most of the points. And when Professor Vidyut Joshi speaks, I think he covers all the points. He left very little thing for us. I'm sure Professor Iyengar would be able to bring out some new point. I have just merely reiterated something, and maybe the point that I made about macro level analysis and micro level analysis would be meaningful in understanding the process of inequality. So I thank once again the organizers, institutions, and Mayank Bhai Upadhyay for inviting me to express my views on inequality from Indian's perspective. I also thank Professor Iyengar and Professor Vidyut Joshi. Professor Iyengar, I will be listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran Pandya. And sorry for a little bit of interruption in between. Thank you very much. Atmanirbhar Bharat. Basically, we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Unless or until we are not able to tackle the inequality and the poverty, I think it's better that we'll say that Atmanirbhar Gaon. So we have to start from Atmanirbhar Gaon rather than we say that Atmanirbhar Bharat. If we start from the small level, I think slowly our village become self-reliant. Then we may talk about rich and poor gap will never be, it is impossible to fill up. But still, at least poor should not become super poor and richer not should become super rich. We have to think about that. We have to work accordingly. Several government policies are there and several government steps are taken for anti-poverty measures taken by the government of India. So we'll talk about that. Stay with us, Dr. Pandya. Now I'll invite Dr. Sudarshan Iyengar, the former Vice Chairman of Gujarat Vidyapeeth. Dr. Iyengar, please.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. Let me also start by thanking Mayank Bhai, Manda Ben, my sister Pushpa Ben, and all the distinguished guests who are here. I see that the offline programs have begun, and it's a pleasure to see this small little congregation, which will of course be warm and very interactive, which people like us who are joining online would miss. Kiran Bhai, as usual, has been very, very generous with his comments to the predecessor and the successor in the session speaker. But I must tell you that I'm just not saying this because he said so, but he's a brilliant economist among the regional and national level. He has done a good analysis and presented to you a picture whereby he has generically analyzed the macro level scene and said that how the inequality has potential to decline over time if the governance is good and we do the proper investments in both public and private sector in education and health. That's a wonderful learning that we should have from a professor of economics. Having said that, I will proceed only on that and begin from this, since the topic we are discussing is COVID and related to COVID, inequality and poverty generally and in the country, and how it is going to impact moving towards the sustainable development goals with respect to inequality and poverty. At the outset, I think it's understood and admitted now, and it will further come by way of my friend economists and others who will work on this and produce Lawrence curves, not only for this country and the region, but maybe also internationally, and find that economic inequality as it is measured by the Lawrence curve has skewed and increased. And there is a reason for that. And definitely in India also, there are anecdotal evidences which tell us that inequality is likely to increase as COVID settles down, third wave, after third wave, or whenever the economy comes back. For this period, I think many analysis will come. It is too early to say. Intuitively, it appears that inequality is going to increase to an extent. Now, whether it is faster than otherwise in the normal situation, non-COVID situation, is difficult to say. However, COVID did have a dent and impact on inequality, and it will increase. Reasons we all know, and I will also discuss some. Poverty, of course. Well, when we understand poverty, we do understand that there is destitution poverty, incidental poverty, and structural poverty. I think 1990 onwards, when we opened up, we brought the privatization, liberalization, and globalization. There was definitely a move towards reducing the poverty in the country. And we did note that significant levels of poverty came down in this country as well, because let us restrict it to our own country. This is known as structural poverty. So we impacted on structural poverty. COVID is an incidence. And incidental poverty is like flood, drought, and severe pandemics, epidemics are known to impact economies because the labor force is affected, production is affected, and therefore you suffer because your GDP falls. And when GDP falls, obviously the share of this GDP which goes to the poorest of the poor, who are either on threshold or below that or above, a little above that, do take this impact and fall into poverty. We have seen how laborers migrated back, how the economy was completely closed. We have a large informal sector where the employment is day to day, and if you don't work for the day, you don't get food because you can't buy food. We all tried, civil society came forward, state came forward to provide reach food to people who were losing their jobs, who lost their jobs for a longer period. It went well for some time, but it could not do so for the longer time. And we saw that people who returned back to their villages, despite increase in allocations of Manrega, all could not really survive well because they didn't get work. So incidental poverty, if whenever, I don't know whether NSSO would do special rounds or it may have done, whenever we'll see the results, we will see that incident poverty levels for the time period would have gone up. This is incidental poverty. Now it is against this backdrop, obviously when poverty and inequality are adversely affected, SDGs will be pushed back, because by 2030, as someone was saying in the previous session, where Professor Vidyut Joshi was speaking, so I think somebody noted that clearly, very clearly, admittedly, the SDGs, I think it is the person who was part of consultation in a big way, he was saying that yes, it is already admitted that in the developing and poor countries, SDG achievements by 2030 is almost an impossibility, and it will be pushed back. This lesson we learned even without pandemic after the MDGs. Not surprising, because of the nature and the structure of the economy we have. So this is not surprising. And I am going to deal little with this and then shift why, if we tried, or if there is still a scope to try, what Gandhi was trying to tell us, do we have a potential and a scope to reduce inequality and poverty not only in this country, but also among the humanity. It's a larger question. But coming back to present situation, for which Kiran Bhai presented a wonderful analysis, he did say that capital investment in health and education is the key how we will improve the human capital, and in turn human capital has a tendency to reduce the economic inequality, which is true, which is an understood fact in the developed countries. However, developed countries today also, due to pandemic, deny this. It has not happened even in developed countries. Evidence is already there. It is quite an anecdotal evidence, but I'm sure with data it will be supported that during pandemic, even in the developed countries, economic inequality has increased, concentration. Governance is central point. And in governance, I think the basic issue is this. Humanity, with all its brilliance and distilled wisdom, has settled still on representative democracy. This is the best thing that humanity has ever achieved in the enlightenment project of the humanity in the West, which began in the West, which is now, of course, spreading all over the humanity in every country. Representative democracy is something that we all appreciate, and this is where we have reached. However, representative democracy also has its limitation, and political scientists will tell us what they are. Now, when the economy disengages from state-controlled economic systems to market-regulated or free market environment economic systems, there is a danger, and it's a real danger, that concentration of power with majority, which we can see perhaps, I mean, in many countries, including this country, concentration of political power, representative democracy has this danger that you can consolidate your power even in representative democracy, and the power becomes political power becomes concentrated. With this, when you have an open economy, it is open only in theory. In practice, I am fond of now saying that state oppresses and market manipulates. Now, the state operation and market manipulation actually result in unholy nexus of state and the market both. Now, it is this cause that causes concentration of wealth in few hands. This let us understand very clearly. COVID or no COVID? COVID is a name, basically any epidemic, pandemic. When temporarily allocations change fast, who can respond best? Small pharmaceutical companies or large pharmaceutical companies? Pharmaceutical giants or pharmaceutical pygmies? Obviously, pharmaceutical giants would be more advantageous in the short run to expand their capacities, produce more, and charge monopolistic prices on the product, both from the state and from the consumer, straight. This would happen. And all the backward and forward linkage industries also would reap this kind of benefit. And whatever other infrastructure development takes place, even in there, the players are going to be those who can do it fast, and those who have already got resources, they would do it faster, so they would amass more wealth. Very simple. So this is where we are. So let's not be surprised. It is in design. It's not that some default has taken place. It's not. It's there by design, that in this particular design, when there is concentration of political and economic power in representative democratic system or monarchy systems, more so, Taliban's would do it much more worse way than what a democracy does, because here at least you can ask some questions still. Whatever we say about the curbing of freedom of expression, you still can afford to be a Deshdrohi and speak out if you are Nidar, Abhay, if you are practicing Abhay, you can do that. So, but the fact remains that this concentration of power is increasing, and it is going to increase. So when this happens, obviously sustainable development goals, which are talking about sustainable development model, which has, removal of poverty, hunger, distribution, decent living, consumption, pollution reduction, all those kind of fancy development goals that we have set up, fancy or real, whatever we have set up are going to get a setback. This is one scenario which I have given, and you can sort of prove it from variety of things. Because if you, what happened to labor, you have seen. So in the capital and labor relationships, capital is better and labor is poorer. So therefore, labor gets exploited. This is what is simply going to happen. In the representative democracy, what happened to the villages where I live? I can just share that with you. The first phase of COVID pandemic went out through smooth. We didn't have any cases, many cases. I shouldn't say any cases. We didn't have many cases. There was no scare. There was no hangama. There was lockdown, yes. This lockdown was in a time when agriculture season was over. There was grain in the house. They could survive. State also came forward. And I must admit that the state was able to reach food in this country, at least in the region where I live. It's a very, very backward region in a general sense of the term, as we all sort of see the background. But the ration came. But the purchasing power which is required to do non-ration things, and if there was some sickness, etc., they had to, as soon as the first wave went, everything opened up a little partially. They all went. There is a rural to rural migration, a big wave which takes place. We are adjacent to Maharashtra from Gujarat, and Maharashtra's towns and big villages who do the grape vineyards, their exposure to Nashik city and Mumbai was very high. So the second phase, they all brought infection with them. And this infection was passed on straight to our laborers who had gone to work there. So second phase was very tough for us. We had almost in every house between April and May, we had cases, we had deaths. In our own small community where we work, we conducted our survey in 20,000 population and had 66 deaths, all of elders. It was a what we call a rational decision on the part of the, I mean, it doesn't look good that I am saying this heartlessly, but it was a rational decision of the young people to decide that old people are in any case going to die, so don't spend after them. So they all, most of them out of 66, we guessed that 45 should be the corona deaths, and of that only 2 or 3 had hospital admissions, rest were allowed to die at home peaceful. Now, from here, and second random observation is that in many states like Bihar, I think I read somewhere, that in large numbers, parents have shifted their children from private school to public schools. Definitely poverty has hit them. There is an incident poverty case, right? So their capacities, the capacities of the poor, the human capital that we were trying to increase has received a significant dent, and therefore we are low, we are down. This is going to remain like this if we don't, what Professor Joshi was saying, talk about a paradigm shift. How prepared we are is a different question. The point is this: why did humanity miss this paradigm? It's a larger question, it's a larger philosophical question, it is the political economy, it is the politics, international politics, national politics, the understanding of the people and the wisdom of the humanity. Wisdom of the humanity still believes by and large that the best development, creativity, etc. is possible under the free market system with minimal state or state helping to do it in terms of infrastructure, blah, 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 all that. And of course, with a DBT, which we have come and settled, at least that's a very rational approach, rather than pushing out, things to give them. You do direct bank transfer, put cash in the hands of people, and they can at least choose and prefer whatever they want to buy, which is a very rational and wise thing to do. Having said that, there is going to be a severe limitation. US was able to pass down $10,000 per person for the year, and we can't do even $100. That's a reality because we're a poor country. So even DBT has severe limitation because state resources, state treasure also has a limited cash resource with it. Fine. What is the paradigm? The paradigm that we are talking about, I mean, if you're really serious about the sustainable development that we are talking about, then governance regional, national, and international governance through representative democracy and unholy nexus between business and polity, forget about sustainable development goals. You will achieve to some extent data. I'm not saying that you will not achieve something. You will come up with any other, UN will come up with some other program which will now say not sustainable, but sustainable, or whatever they want. From millennium development, you can to sustainable, and from sustainable, survivable. I don't know what they will do. That's not the concern. The concern is this. What is it that this person who thought differently had to say, which is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi? This person had an idea which doesn't click with the rational intellect of the humanity, especially the rational intellect in among social scientists, economists, policymakers, bankers, etc., who want to run the economy, which is really very important part of survival of the human society and human being individually as well as a society. Now, Gandhi's paradigm, and of course, let us, if you look at his obiter dicta on what he wanted to say on inequality, I will very quickly read 2-3 lines. He says, I want to bring about an equalization of status. My ideal is equal distribution, but so far as I can see, it is not to be realized. I therefore work for equitable distribution. The economics, true economics never militates against the highest ethical standard. Just as all true ethics to be worth its name must be at the same time also good economics. And economics that inculcates mammon worship and enables the strong to amass wealth at the expenses of the weak is a false and dismal science. It spells death. True economics, on the other hand, stands for social justice. It promotes the good of all, equality including the weakest, and is indispensable for decent life. Now, this is crux. Now, in this crux, what is the operational point? The operational point he was offering was decentralized polity. He talked about Gram Swaraj. We don't want Gram Swaraj. Actually, we don't want Gram itself. My friend, young friend, was already arguing, what is the problem? There are only 5% in the developed countries. There are only 5% of the people who are relying on agriculture and allied sector. Subsidize them as much as state wants to, and rest people are happy. 95% people are happy. Urban society, as I said, market manipulates, and therefore urban societies where there is a faceless society, there is fraud, deceit, and greed. It's there, we all know it. Let's admit. And economics cannot simply shake itself off the human values and say that we are value neutral, we are rational because we are science and we are going to this analysis. The reality is that these are the true things that really obtain in real life. So the real economics works with all this. It works with ethical values. Management people are now breaking their heads to bring spirituality, ethical standards in their management teaching. And they are saying that managing self is more important. If you learn how to manage yourself, you will be able to manage others. All this, discourse is now coming and changing, the management education as well. But the central point which Gandhi was trying to make was this: decentralize it. Get to Gram Swaraj. If in a face-to-face society, participative democracy has to be slowly. Rakesh Bhai was saying that. So I just was about to say, Rakesh Bhai has told the key words today or key sentences. So what we are talking about is participative democracy is where you will make that SDG where you have to discuss about sustainable consumption and production. That's the point. I think that point was made in the earlier session by the moderator. This sustainable consumption production debate can only happen where you have participative democracy. Participative democracy is where every adult is able to participate, which can only happen in a unit like village. And in that, Gandhi says, once you have the decentralized polity, roti, kapda or makan, basic essentials and necessities will have to be worked out at that level. There has to be choice, preference, and need generation at that level, and need satisfaction, want satisfaction at that level. So if you are able to do this, and he's not saying that every village is Atmanirbhar Swavalamban doesn't mean that every village has to become Swavalambi in everything. No, absolutely clear. My idea of village Swaraj, Gandhi says, is that it's a complete republic, independent of its neighbors for its own vital wants, and yet interdependent for many others in which dependence is necessary. He is not closed. He can talk even about international trade. The idea is the unit at which we must try the unit's viability, whereby we achieve individual viability as well. Now, it is here where I'll be able to take care of your poverty. So what he's talking about is decentralized polity, which is participative democracy. Participative democratic decisions will decide the production and consumption and choice and preferences. कि भाई रोटी कपड़ा और मकान में सिर्फ neighbor से ही लूँ. I'll take it from my neighbor. I will not buy it. The Peter England shirt is very good, but thank you. Let Peter England people should use. I will buy my Manu Bhai's shirt who's producing in the neighborhood. Good point. That's bad economics, but it is ethical economics. Bad economics in the conventional sense. You will be dubbed as irrational, but all that irrationality, if it is added by point of ethics, then it is a good economics, which he wants to say that all good economics must be ethical, and yet he is not allowing state to do any production. Gandhi is a free market person, absolutely to be understood. He's a free market person, except that he is talking about decentralized production consumption systems, which will be imposed by the community itself. It's the community's choice. There he brings in community's choice. If you do this, then what would have happened? My farmers, if they were roti, kapda or makan, they were satisfied, they would not have gone to the vineyards of Nashik or to the town. And they would not have brought COVID with them. As they were safe in first phase, they would have been safe in second phase. It's not only COVID that I'm talking about. Rural areas, by general this thing, rural areas, the incidence was relatively less than the urban areas, because urban areas are more dense, where catching of infection is always fast, or any infectious disease spreads faster in urban areas. It's well known. 2, curative practices were so exploitative in urban areas that even the middle class lost its savings. This is true. So if you look at this whole model, then we have not given a chance to this Gandhi's idea, Gandhi's paradigm of talking about participative democracy and decentralized production system. And I can go on telling you Swadeshi and all that. And of course, for the self-rule that Professor Joshi was talking about, 11 vows, only 1 or 2 is not everything is consistent. You practice everything else and you are fine. You should do that. It's difficult, but we will have to move towards that. That itself, solving the problem at that unitary level, which is village, you can then go on advancing at a higher level and achieving of SDGs, whatever we are trying to do. Because what will happen is when you scale down your production to that level, you are reducing fuel consumption, fossil fuel consumption to a large extent. Today, I am getting rice from Punjab in my ration shop. Why should I do that? Even in representative democracy, we have been foolish running our PDS system where Punjab's rice is carried to this place, which is 1,200 kilometers away. My own person who has very good agrobiodiversity, if I bought what they were eating, then there is a price signal given to them where state is buying, then the production can go up, and there is no, they are not disincentivized against the free paddy or the low price paddy, which is highly subsidized, come from Punjab and given to me in a ration shop here. Do you see this point? That even representative democracy, there are some areas on which we can work if we really think about decentralization in this sense, because we have to, in any case, transit. But our problem is that our discourse is very clear. We don't want to transform our villages. We want to wait. We are in transition, not in the process of transformation. Transition is that all rural areas should be vacated, and as far as possible, they must be dumped in urban areas. That is the paradigm, and that is the discourse. Beware, let's beware, let's be clear. Do any amount of discussions you want to, but if you don't shift this paradigm, the larger discourse is this. Okay, so if that is the larger discourse, then as I said in the beginning, there is very small possibility that COVID's impact can be absorbed. It will definitely increase inequality, poverty will rise. Incidentally, it may come back again to the same level, but it will not go away. It's an aspiration issue as well. Poverty today is not only roti ki poverty. Everybody is eating some morsels. But my people have started preferring what is coming in the packages. So layers chips are more fancy. For those 5 rupees, they will not buy their grain and eat. The choice is between this. So what nutrition they get, then you shout that there is purchasing capacity, yet there is malnutrition. There will be choices because that's the economy we are pushing. We are great in food processing. I am also guilty of that. I processed this in one district where I was saying value added, value added, value added, value added. So dirt added. That's the position. What we can do at local level, we are trying to do at macro level, use all the fossil fuel that we have, and we want to transport that, create pollution, more expansion, put more pesticides and fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers into farm, kill the soil, and all that we are landing ourselves into a soup, which will continue. So I'm sorry for this broader analysis, but since you're talking about COVID and sustainable development goals with respect to inequality and poverty, I just tried to connect things. And if I've been able to do and sort of persuaded to think, especially those who are in the consultative process of planning at a macro level, since we are going to continue representative democracy for long, if these things are brought, even in this representative democracy, like we did have Panchayati Raj institution revolution by the constitution amendments that we have, if we are able to strictly practice this, we have a way of doing it. And in that sense, education will come into public sector at the village level. And that village level education has to be vocational education. Gandhi's last gift was Nayi Talim. He was working on hand, head, and heart, all the three. So heart education gave you values, hand education gave you skill, and head education gave you knowledge. Now, this is what we want to really do. And at village level, this is well done because you have land, you have livestock, whatever your resource is locally, you get skilled in that so that your productivity improves. You are able to be a self-employment or an entrepreneur within your own areas. You don't have to really go out. There are stories, but this is where I think I will stop. Of course, I will be happy to respond to questions, if any. If I have exceeded my time, I'm sorry. I mean, I was not warned about it. Rakesh Bhai has been perhaps liberal, saying, "Yaar, bade professor ko rokte nahi hai, to ghanti nahi bajayi hogi, baja dete to main chup ho jata." Thank you very much.
Excellent, sir. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And since we have only 10 minutes left to the lunch, so any question if you want to address to Dr. Iyengar or Dr. Pandya, please.
Very good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for your wonderful address. And just this is question related to your talk, Iyengar sir, obviously, and your talk and previous talk as well. There was the Ekadas Vrat. Now you have talked about Gandhian philosophy. There are two things which remembered in my mind. One is the Gandhiji had advocated about the trusteeship. This is directly related to the Sustainable Development Goals 12, that is the consumer and the other things. And one thing he always thrust about that there should be the production by masses, not mass production. If we can correlate these things, what is your view, sir? We are ignoring the villages. We are ignoring the rural areas. Now we are seeing prosperity only in the urbanization. This is not good at all. And we are doing willingly or unwilling on society. We are moving on societal path. Because if we are unable to stop the migration, if we are unable to create good things in village itself, I don't think we are doing good things. So please, your view, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You have said it. I think because of the paucity of time, we had to limit things, but you're right. When you talk about decentralized production systems, or when you are in representative democracy, you continue to do that. There is concentration of wealth. Gandhi gives a theory, and which is, he says that this is my theory. Gandhi's only theoretical contribution all his life has been the principle of trusteeship. Principle of trusteeship brings in the point of ethics in economics, as he wants to do, in a theoretical framework where he says that under the capitalism and communism, there is violence. And for a non-violent society, he accepts that there is differences in abilities of individual. The inter-individual differences definitely will do concentration of wealth for those who are specially creative entrepreneur in that, which is fine. But the wealth that you create, he argues, is not, although it is your initiative and innovation, you cannot produce without the others. So therefore, in the profit, it's not enough, as we say in economics, to give to the factors of production and then reap the profit. He says that even profit is to be shared where humans are involved. So you have given interest, you have given rent, you have given everything, you have given wages, but after that, you still have profit, which also has to be shared with the society after keeping something for yourself, which may be definitely higher and according to your need and little luxury that you want to indulge in. But still, I don't know I should say this, you cannot live in Antilia, a 27-story building where you have 10-story of parking for 6 people. You can't. And if one does that, if you can't persuade them to trusteeship, the action point, he said, is civil disobedience, asahakar, and satyagraha. You are absolutely right. That becomes a political action. And in that process, Vinoba tried through his Bhudan. The only point was that Vinoba said, मैं कत्ल से नहीं, कानून से नहीं, करुणा से चाहता हूं. I don't want out of murder, out of law, but out of compassion. Gandhi would have said, मैं कर्तव्य से मांगता हूं. He would have put it as a duty, and then that is where the satyagraha would be. Bhumiputra, Bhumidan, Bhudan did not have that kind of satyagraha. Gandhi would have added it. So maybe we would have gone a different way. The way is still open for us if we can do it. But you are right.
Thank you so much.
Is the principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyengar. We have questions. Please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Thomas from Vishwa Yuva Kendra. So you had, in your talk, you had mentioned about participative democracy. And you mentioned in Gandhian times, participative democracy was the way to go about. But today it's different times, it's Modi times. So do you actually think there is a participative democracy that can happen? Because democracy is only one day in 5 years that we actually have a say in what we do.
Yeah, Thomas, I've got your questions. There is no time, very short answer. There's no Gandhi, there's no Modi. I'm just trying designs. Gandhi's time also participative democracy may or may not be happening. Villages were more feudal at that time. Gandhi's approach was Gram Swaraj. He said that his constructive program was Gram Swaraj. And Gram Swaraj examples today also are there. It's happening in Gadchiroli district. You can go to Mendalekha where you will find an interesting, ek nara hai. They say that Mumbai, Delhi mein hamari sarkar, hamare gaon mein hum hi sarkar. Now this is participative democracy and Gram Swaraj in the real sense. So let's not worry about what the party is. Irrespective of the party, we have had representative democracy where concentration of power will continue. It's not this group, this party, that party. No, it's not. In the party itself, somebody will be more powerful, somebody will be less powerful, somebody will be more open for internal democracy, somebody will not be. But the design itself I'm talking about is that representative democracy is still the best form that humanity has achieved, but it has limitations. Gandhi was saying, try participative democracy, which is where every adult can participate in the process. That can happen at a smaller scale, where the economy and polity and society, everything will have to be in a smaller scale. That is the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your address, sir. I think we have to end the session. Thank you so much. I thank CAS, I thank Yuvak Vikas Trust and everyone here. It's a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Pandya, and thank you, Dr. Iyengar, for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We'll break for lunch right now, and the lunch is in the restaurant, the same level as the reception. We request you all to please be back by 1:55 so that we can start the session right in time. Thank you.